There's a couple things I want to talk about with Eric DeCosta. Number one, there's this report from Jeff Zrebiec and what he saw at the end of the game from the press box of Eric DeCosta on the field. So I want to get that reaction. Then Jeff and us will analyze exactly what it is that Eric DeCosta must do, has no choice to do, but also he needs to decide if he should do coming out of the bye. And finally, we need to talk about some of the accountability that Eric DeCosta himself needs to be had. We've talked about players. We've talked about coaching. We need to talk a little bit more about the roster building and the accountability that needs to be happening there. So let's get to Jeff and his report from The Athletic and what he saw yesterday after the game. He says, he writes in The Athletic this morning, Baltimore Ravens general manager Eric DeCosta watches games from the sideline, usually stationing himself on the far end, slightly beyond the players and coaches, so his vision is not obscured. DeCosta likes to be in control, yet he knows there's nothing he can do once the ball is kicked off. At least being on the sideline gets DeCosta closer to the action and gives the general manager a little more space as he grapples with the emotions of an NFL game. As the clock wound down Sunday on another Ravens loss, this one a 17-3 defeat by the Los Angeles Rams in a game in which Baltimore showed some improvement defensively, but couldn't overcome a litany of mistakes offensively. DeCosta stood, mostly stationary. And then DeCosta didn't budge as players and coaches from both teams met near midfield and exchanged congratulations and well wishes. He stared in the direction of the field and the north end of M&T Bank Stadium, which was nowhere near full when the game began and had long since emptied. After about 30 seconds, DeCosta pivoted and headed toward a locker room that hadn't experienced a victory in nearly a month. His team is 1-5, and a season many predicted would end with Super Bowl glory is circling the drain. If the Ravens have a stopper in the organization, he's yet to come forward as the situation has grown more dire by the week. So let's pause right there. So obviously Jeff can see Eric down there on the field, and after the game, he just stood motionless, stood stationary, just staring, not talking to anybody, just staring. Obviously, the body language of somebody that, I don't know, maybe he's in shock a little bit. Maybe he's dismayed. Maybe he's dejected. Maybe he's in unbelief. Maybe he was just thinking about the moves that he needs to make coming up over the bye week, the conversations that he needs to have. But clearly introspective as he stands there staring and stationary, according to Jeff Zrebiec. So Jeff goes on to write this. He says, with his team seemingly getting healthier and the schedule getting lighter, DeCosta is not going to wave the white flag, says Jeff. Eric DeCosta has no choice but to add an outside linebacker after he traded Odafe Owe last week, and then watch Robinson go down Sunday with an injury that will keep him sidelined for the foreseeable future. I mean, can we talk about this for a second? In 1 week, the Ravens are down 2 of their most active outside linebackers. On the heels of trading away Odafe Owe, and you partially feel good about it because of your rookie Mike Green, but also because of Tavius Robinson. So you feel okay about it. Hey, we need more help at safety. We're not getting a pass rush anyway. We'll just go with our guy, Tavius Robinson. He's a workhorse, seals the edge. He does the things that he's supposed to do. Not a game wrecker, but it's solid. So we'll go ahead and give up Odafe, who we're not going to pay anyway after the season, for a safety. And that trade worked for the Ravens, but it also seemed to work for the Chargers because Odafe Owe went out, and then all he did is in the first quarter of being a Charger, he got a sack. And now you're out Tavius Robinson. So as Jeff is saying here, that's the easy decision. This is the easy decision. You have to go find another outside linebacker. It's not going to be Sardarius Smith. He announced right before the show started today that he is retiring from the NFL. Could you trade for one? Maybe. But should he? That's where Jeff gets into next. The outside linebacker decision is the easy decision. But that's where the easy decisions end, he says, and the tough ones begin. What exactly has Baltimore shown DeCosta's to suggest it's capable of winning 9 of its final 11 games, which it will probably take to make the postseason? 9 of the next 11 games. Can Lamar Jackson take this roster, who's 1-5, and really propel them to 9 wins over the next 11? Oh, and by the way, simultaneously, what would probably need to happen if you at least want to win the AFC North? The first place Steelers, who are now 4-1, they would have to lose 9 of their next 12 games. So in order to win the AFC North, Lamar Jackson would have to lead this 1-5 team to 9 wins simultaneously while the Steelers lose 9 of their last 12. Woo! Yeah, it's asking a lot. And that's why Jeff's asking, what exactly has Baltimore shown to DeCosta to say it's capable of winning those 9 games? And that he should augment those efforts by trading long-term assets for potential short-term fixes. That's what Eric DeCosta has to ask himself. Do I want to give up long-term assets for the short term if the short term is looking dire? Okay, if the Ravens were 3-3, they were at 500 right now, then the answer is absolutely yes, do it. Do it. But what if they trade away these assets and they still miss the playoffs? That's what Eric DeCosta has to ask himself. Again, you have to go get an outside linebacker. Something has to be done there. That's a no-brainer. You don't have the manpower. But do you risk the future for this short term? This one? Jeff writes finally at the end. He said, standing on the sideline, DeCosta had a great view of the whole thing, but now he has to decide whether this is a season worth saving. The Ravens didn't give him too many compelling reasons Sunday to suggest that it is worth saving. And that's what he's got to ask himself. Can the season be saved? Is it worth the assets to even try to do so? And you know what? Speaking of accountability, we just talked in the previous section about how John Harbaugh needs to make a change across the offensive line. But how did we get here in the first place? It was Eric DeCosta that looked at this roster and said, we're good with Daniel Faalele. We're good with him. I'm not going to go out and get anybody besides Ben Cleveland and a third-round draft pick who apparently the Ravens knew already had that shoulder injury when they drafted him. That's what you went and did. You got Ben Cleveland, who your head coach doesn't want to play. And then you got Emory Jones in the 3rd round with a shoulder injury. He also saw Andrew Voorhees. He said, you know what, I'm going to make him my guy. I'm not going to bring back my offensive lineman extraordinaire, whose name is McCary, who kind of can sub in at several different places, but was basically the starting left guard last year. I'm going to go with Andrew Voorhees. I'm going to look at the defensive line. I'm going to say, hey, we're going to lose Michael Pierce, and I'm not going to go out and get a huge dude to replace him. Not anybody that I'm going to really spend on. That's what he did. So he deserves some of the accountability in this. And as we look at this, and he has to ask himself, okay, well, I messed up during the offseason. I didn't go and reinforce the trenches, even though I've been taught that my entire career by Ozzie Newsome, that it's the trenches where you win and lose football games. So I didn't build up the trenches. And now here we are at 1-5. And I know, I'm sure he's been told, that only 4 teams since the 1970 merger have ever started 1-5 and then reached the playoffs. The 1970 Bengals did it. The 2015 Chiefs do it. The 2018 Colts do it. And the last team to do it was the 2020 Washington Commanders. I believe all of them were one and done, by the way. They may have salvaged their season, made the playoffs, but I'm pretty sure they were all one and done. So Ryan Mink points out here that that's the mission after the bye, is to try to become the 5th team to ever do that. Meanwhile, it's getting tougher in the AFC North. We saw the results yesterday. The Steelers beat the Browns 23-9 to move to 4-1. Cincinnati Bengals, oh, that's the 3rd quarter score. That's my bad. But in the end, the Cincinnati Bengals lost to the Green Bay Packers. So they fall, and here's your AFC North standings. Steelers 4-1, Bengals 2-4, Ravens 1-5, Browns 1-5. The Ravens are tied with the Browns. I guess they have the tiebreaker because they beat them head-to-head. They're tied with the Browns at the bottom of the division at 1-5. So I asked this yesterday in the show. I said, is this week finally the week that Vegas says that the Ravens do not have the best odds to win the division? Well, we got our answer, and the answer is yes. Finally, for the first time this season, the Steelers officially become the favorites to win the AFC North. FanDuel writes that it's the Aaron Rodgers effect. I suppose. We'll see. We'll see. But they are now the top of the odds makers list at minus 125, and the Ravens are second at 140. And so my feeling is that Eric DeCosta should do, let me put it this way. Let me rephrase this. Lamar Jackson's going to be out there after the bye. They'll have about 1 or 2 games to play before the trade deadline. If the Ravens lose one of those 2 games, Eric DeCosta should not put up big assets for a big trade. But if Lamar comes back and they win 1, and then even 2, then absolutely Eric DeCosta needs to make a big-time trade. He's got the money for it. He's got the cap money for it. After he traded away Odafe, the Ravens have a little less than $15 million on the cap. A little less than $15 million. If Lamar comes back and they beat the Bears, and then they win the second game, who do they win? Who's the second game? Let's bring this up real quick. If Lamar comes back and he beats the Bears, come on. And then is it the Vikings or the Dolphins? Why is it when the Google review, they put up the schedule looking so weird? You can't see which one's which. Okay, you've got the Bears and you've got the Dolphins. That's on 10:30. So if Lamar comes back, wins 10-26, wins 10:30, then Eric DeCosta absolutely needs to make a big move. He needs to make a big move because Lamar would be doing his part, and Eric DeCosta would need to help him in that effort. If the Ravens lose, then it's over. It's over. Pack it up. And the Ravens absolutely should be able to beat the Bears and the Dolphins with Lamar Jackson. And if they don't, it's because they didn't change one of those 4 things I talked about. They didn't do an offensive line change. They didn't get better at situational play calling. And they didn't change their defensive play caller. It would be because of that.